Officers at their stations.
I shall call the roll of officers, determine if they are at their stations, and report back to you, Mr. President. The Sentinel.
Stationed by the door.
Your duty's there.
Through this door pass many friends of the FFA. It is my duty to see that the door is open to our friends at all times and that they are welcome. I care for the meeting room and paraphernalia. I strive to keep the room comfortable and assist the President in maintaining order.
The Reporter.
The reporter is stationed by the flag.
Why by the flag?
As the flag covers the United States of America, so I strive to inform the people, in order that every man, woman, and child may know that the FFA is a national organization that reaches from the state of Alaska to Puerto Rico and from the state of Maine to Hawaii.
The Treasurer.
Stationed at the emblem of Washington.
Your duty's there.
I keep a record of receipts and disbursements, just as Washington kept his farm accounts, carefully and accurately. I encourage thrift among the members and strive to build up our financial standing through savings and investments. George Washington was better able to serve his country because he was financially independent.
The Secretary.
Stationed by the ear of corn.
Your duty's there.
I keep an accurate record of all meetings and correspond with other secretaries wherever corn is grown and FFA members meet.
The Advisor.
Here by the owl.
Why stationed by the owl?
The owl is a time-honored emblem, knowledge and wisdom. Being older than the rest of you, I am asked to advise you from time to time as need arises. I hope my advice is always based on true knowledge and ripened with wisdom. Mr. Vice President, why do you keep a plow at your station?
The plow is a symbol of labor and tillage of the soil. Without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. My duties require me to assist at all times in directing the work of our organization. I preside over meetings in the absence of our President, whose place is beneath the rising sun.
Why is the President so stationed?
The rising sun is a token of a new era in agriculture. If we will follow the leadership of our President, we shall be led out of the darkness of selfishness and into the glorious sunlight of brotherhood and cooperation. Mr. President, all officers are at their stations.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Secretary will call the roll of members.
There are 7 members and numerous guests present, Mr. President.
Thank you. FFA members, why are we here?
To practice brotherhood, honor agricultural opportunities and responsibilities, and develop those qualities of leadership which an FFA member should possess.
May we accomplish our purposes, I now declare this meeting of the MAX FFA chapter duly open for the transaction of business and attention to any matters which may properly be presented. Is there any new business?
Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President.
I move that our chapter build a trebuchet for the National Pumpkin Chunkin Contest.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that our chapter build a trebuchet for the National Pumpkin Chunkin Contest. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President.
I think that this motion is a wonderful and great idea. What better way to gain publicity for our FFA chapter than to have a U.S. National Pumpkin Chunkin trebuchet built? This is an awesome idea. Everybody would think that we are the coolest chapter in the state if we build this trebuchet. So I encourage you all to get behind me and vote in the affirmative on this motion.
Mr. President.
Madam Treasurer.
I think this motion is a stupendous idea. My home garden grows extremely large pumpkins. This year we had a 90-pound pumpkin, and it would be amazing to throw that in the air with a trebuchet, which is a catapult. So imagine that flying across. We could win an award or something with this, which would be fabulous for our chapter. Vote yes on this motion with me.
Mr. President,
Madam Reporter.
I think that this trebuchet building is a horrible idea. What about liability? We can't be, as FFA members, we can't be affording this. Vote no.
Mr. President.
Madam Secretary.
Our chapter should not go through with this motion. Recently in our school we've had some bullying problems, and I believe that if we build a catapult, violence will continue to go up, and our younger members will think that violence is okay. So I encourage you all to vote no on this motion.
Mr. President.
Mr. Sentinel.
I think that this motion is a great idea. I believe that it would pose a slight challenge to our chapter, being that it would be building a very large object. However, I believe that it would be great because we have shown examples of our ingenuity in the past. So I encourage you all to vote yes.
Mr. President,
Madam Reporter.
I believe that this is a horrible idea. As FFA members, this would cause liability as well as other problems. I was a worker in our garden. We had pumpkins, but it took a lot of hard work, and we can't just be throwing that all up in the air with a trebuchet. I encourage you all to fail this motion.
Mr. President,
I
Mr.
have
Vi-
a question of privilege.
State your question.
It's slightly hot in here. Could we turn on the thermostat?
Being that we are in an official meeting and we do not have access to the thermostat, I cannot grant your wishes. Mr. Vice President, please continue.
I think that this motion.
I rise to point of order.
State your point.
The Vice President has already spoken twice on this motion.
Point not well taken. This is only his second time. Mr. Vice President, please continue.
As I was saying, I still think that this motion is a wonderful idea. Building a trebuchet will not only get us publicity, but I think it'll also help us get resources for our chapter. We've been having problems with funds in the past. We actually had to up our minimums for our fundraisers, and I think that building this trebuchet will help us get maybe donations from people who see our chapter and like, oh hey, they're doing something awesome. They're building a trebuchet. So I think we should really, really consider this motion strongly, and we should pass it in order to help our chapter.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I move to postpone this motion to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
The properly moved and seconded to postpone this motion to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
I think that postponing this motion is a stupendous idea because it will give us time to look at the financial costs of building a trebuchet, and it will also give us time to look at the logistics of inviting other chapters to the pumpkin chunking contest, or whether we would be traveling to it. We need to be able to find how much it's going to cost us, and by delaying this to the next meeting, we're going to have time to look at that and come up with a better answer. Vote in the affirmative on this postpone.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I believe that this postpone is an absolutely horrible idea. We have already had plenty discussion on this motion, and all of our members here already know what we're talking about. And if we postpone it, not all of our members will remember what we spoke about. And I encourage you all to vote no on this postpone.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I believe that this postpone is a great idea, as it will give us time to figure out different logistic aspects of this, and by shortening the time we are available to work on this would not be a problem, considering with our ingenuity we've shown that we can do things in a short amount of time. For example, the gavel that our president is using currently we made in 2 days, and it was not a problem, so I encourage you all to vote yes on this postpone.
Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of our chapter building a trebuchet for the National Pumpkin Chunking Contest signify by saying aye.
I rise to a point of order.
State your point.
We are on the postpone definitely.
Oh, point well taken. Those in favor of postponing this motion to our next regularly scheduled meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by saying no.
No.
The ayes have it, the motion passes. Is there any further business?
Mr. President,
Mr. Student Advisor.
I move that we start an alpaca farm.
I call. Second.
I call for the orders of the day.
The orders of the day have been called for. We proceed to follow the orders of the day by proceeding with service projects. Is there any new business?
Mr. President,
Madam Reporter.
I move that our chapter provide refreshments for all election officials at the local voting precincts on election day.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that our chapter provide refreshments. Can you please state that again, please?
I move that our chapter provide refreshments for all election officials on the voting precincts on election day.
And for clarification, was there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that our chapter provide refreshments for all election officials on the precinct. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Madam Reporter.
I believe that this will be very advantageous for our chapter as FFA members. In our motto, it states "Living to Serve," and by providing these refreshments, I believe that we are accomplishing that task. So vote yes on this motion.
Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President.
I think that this motion is an awful idea. November is a very busy time for us, which is when these elections will take place. We have the FFA hayride going on. We have a lot of other things. We have basketball starting. I don't think it would be wise to stretch our members this thin when we are already having kids overloaded, so I encourage you all to vote no on this motion.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I believe that our chapter should go forth with this motion. We have plenty of people that support our fundraisers that are working at the election day, and if we bring them refreshments, I believe that they will appreciate it a lot, and they will be more willing to give back to our chapter. So I encourage you all to follow me and vote yes on this motion.
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
I believe that this motion is an absolutely horrible idea due to the fact that Max doesn't have a local voting precinct anymore. For our members to be able to provide these refreshments, we would have to travel to Washburn, I believe, is the nearest local voting area for our chapter. So it's going to be a long drive, and our members might not be able to do that. So we need to fail this motion. Vote no.
Mr. President.
Mr. Sentinel.
I think that this motion is a terrible idea. It does not state what we are going to give as refreshments or how often we're going to do it. Are we going to do it periodically or just one time? I encourage you all to slam the door on this motion and vote no.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary,
I move the previous question.
Second.
the previous question has been moved. Those in favor of moving the previous question, please rise. Be seated. Those opposed, rise. Be seated. There's 1 in the affirmative and 5 in the negative. The moving the previous question fails. Is there any further discussion on the main motion, which states that our chapter provide refreshments for all election officials at the President for elections?
Mr. President,
Madam Reporter.
I believe that this will be very beneficial for our chapter. I'm the reporter and I promote our chapter, so I can write an article on this and it will give us positive publication. So vote yes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I move to amend the main motion by striking out the words refreshment and inserting the words milk and cookies.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to amend the main motion by striking out the words refreshment and inserting the words milk and cookies. So if adopted, the whole motion will read that our chapter provide milk and cookies for all election officials present at the elections. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Mr. President.
Mr. Sentinel.
I believe that this amendment is a great idea considering that it fills in one of the gaps that was missing in the main motion, so I encourage you all to vote yes on this amendment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice
I
President.
think that this motion is an awful idea. Milk and cookies are pretty expensive. Milk is expensive, and cookies, are we going to get the cheap store-bought cookies that taste awful, or are we going to force our members to make a whole bunch of cookies? A lot of people vote in the county, and that's everybody from the county has to go to Washburn to vote. So I don't think that we're going to be able to make enough cookies, or we're going to be able to afford to buy enough cookies for everybody who's going to vote. So I encourage you all to vote no on this amendment.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I believe that this amendment is a wonderful idea. Not only was it a great idea before, but now we have some clarification as to what we're providing for these officials. And as stated by a previous member, we'd be providing cookies for everybody. As the main motion states that it is just for the election officials, so there's not going to be very many election officials. So I think that as a chapter we would be able to do this and complete it very greatly. So I encourage you all to vote yes on this amendment.
Discussion. Hearing none, we will proceed to vote on the amendment. Those in favor of striking the words refreshments and inserting the words milk and cookies signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
The noes have it. The motion fails. We will not insert the words milk and cookies. Is there any further discussion on the main motion?
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
I still believe that this motion is a horrible idea due to the time restraint. November is a very busy month for our chapter. We are just getting back from National Convention, and our members aren't going to have time to provide all this and make all the cookies, as they already make cookies for National Honor Society around this time. We need to fail this motion. Vote no with me.
Discussion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I move to lay this motion on the table.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to lay this motion on the table. This motion is non-debatable. Those in favor of laying this motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
The noes have it. The motion fails. We will not lay this motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Discussion. Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Those in favor of our chapter providing refreshments for all election officials present at the election ceremonies signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
The noes have it. The motion fails. We will not provide refreshments. Madam Secretary, do you have a record of any further business which should now be transacted?
I have none, Mr. President.
Does any member know of any new or unfinished business which should now come properly before this meeting? We are about to adjourn this meeting of the Max FFA chapter. As we mingle with others, let us be diligent in our labor, just in our dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life. Fellow members and guests, please join me in a salute to our flag.